My name is Elizabeth de Deus. I am a vocal coach and music producer, and this is Metal Mastermind. Well, I've been singing all of my life. I grew up singing in choirs, opera, gospel, and I went to a specialized high school as a vocal major, really into Broadway show tunes, stuff like that. It wasn't really until I was in my early 20s when I really started discovering what kind of music I liked. I listened to a lot of bands like the Misfits and Bad Brains and Circle Jerks. So I started going to those kind of shows, and then I started singing in a horror punk band, and that was super fun. I really started to experiment with my sound and learn new techniques and just like learn how to feel comfortable on stage and have that rock and roll stage presence. Being a vocalist is pretty cool. That's like my form of creative expression. I feel fully alive when I'm singing, whether I'm on stage or I'm just like in my room writing a song or just singing like show tunes in my shower, whatever it is. It's just, I don't know, my go-to, and I love it. I love being a singer. Writing my own music, that was such a transformation. Growing up, even when I was like singing in bands and stuff, I never really saw myself as like a composer. I mean, sure, yeah, I would write music for the bands I was in. You know, we would jam and we would just come up with songs, but they never really felt like my songs, right? It was like our songs, which was like super dope. I loved it. But it wasn't until I really had like this burning desire to write like my own music the way that I heard it in my head. So it became very apparent that that was like my next purpose as a vocalist and a musician. That's when I went back to school and started studying music production, audio engineering, because I wanted to learn how to compose my own music that felt 100% authentic to me. And I think that's like the best feeling in the world, just seeing that come to life. Music theory is super important. I love music theory. Sometimes it feels like math because I feel like there's this misconception with learning music theory of just like a really old professor with like a monotone voice just being like, you know, and C major chord is. And it could be super fun. You know, it's music at the end of the day. Half of it's math, and the other half is just creativity and art. And just like learning the terminology, it's so much more fluent and comfortable to talk to other musicians about just what you want and, you know, just jamming with musicians when you both kind of speak that same language. Once I started like really learning more advanced music theory in college, that's when I was just like, oh, okay, that's why this sounds good and that's why this sounds bad. Like being able to understand why music was just mind-blowing for me. And I'm telling you, my songs, I started writing progressive metal because of that. I honestly don't think I'd be able to compose progressive metal if I didn't know music theory. I actually have a few methods for writing harmonies. Number one, understanding music theory definitely helps, you know. Even if you just like know how to play a few chords on the piano and you know what notes build up those chords, like a C major chord is C, E, G. Right there, that's a harmony. And that kind of gives me like an idea of what harmonies I can write or start off with, just knowing what that chord is. One thing that I recommend doing with harmony, especially if maybe you're not too advanced with music theory, or even if you are, it's just super fun. When you're in the car, just really rock out to your car to some top 40 hits. The reason why I say that is because most of the time, the chord progressions and the melodies are very predictable. They're not too complex at all, and it's really easy to practice harmonizing with like the vocalist in those songs because you kind of already have like a guide of where to go. I highly recommend that technique if you're trying to get better at doing harmonies like on the spot and like improvising. Another awesome thing that I recommend for practicing harmonies, and this is something that I did for a long time, like way before I learned how to use like Pro Tools and stuff like that. I just downloaded a 4-track app on my phone. So if you just search any like 4-track audio app or something like that, it's very straightforward and you can record your first melody to a click and then lower the volume on that and then record your harmony on the next track. Listen to them together, and that's like a good way to kind of test harmonies out. And it's just like super easy because it's right on your phone. So if you're just sitting on the couch one day, like, I don't know, lay out a couple harmonies like right up there on your app, and you can save them and, use them for later or send them to your friends or your band. So that's like another way that I do it as well. I think when it comes to learning music theory, and as a vocal coach teaching music theory, you want to have like a good balance of just the very like technical, mathematical side of music theory and the fun, creative, artistic form of expression way of learning music theory. You have to have a good balance because, you're sitting through all of this and you're learning all this so that you can do this more freely and have a better grasp of writing your own music. So if you wanted to write prog metal, right, probably would want to learn more about different time signatures, odd time signatures, key changes, weird chord progressions, stuff like that. Figure out what you need to learn and apply it to your music right away so that it stays fun and fresh, and then you're also like, making your music as you go. Yes, I definitely have a lot of awesome tips for recording vocals in the studio, whether you're going into a studio or you're just doing it at home. There's a lot of preparation that you can do so that when it's time to record, it goes very smoothly and everything's just kind of planned out, and it's much easier to get into your element. The first thing that I recommend is memorizing your lyrics. If you don't have your lyrics memorized, it's really easy for vocal technique to kind of just go out the door. So definitely memorize your lyrics so that you don't have to worry about it and you could just focus on, laying down the best track that you can, and you have all that good vocal technique that you rehearsed. So before you get into the studio, just take some time to figure out what kind of vocal techniques you want to use where. Are you growling certain phrases? Are you singing some parts in a soft voice or like in a mixed voice? Are you really belting out certain parts where you plan on taking a breath? It really helps you feel a lot more confident when you're laying down those tracks in the studio. Another important tip that I have, this probably should have been number one, but just vocal health, vocal maintenance, before you go into a studio. I feel like this should be obvious, but don't go out screaming, partying, don't go to a crazy rave party and totally lose your voice the night before. You want to make sure that your voice sounds the best that it possibly can. Get a good night's rest, full 8 hours, have a nice breakfast. I would recommend cutting out some dairy for breakfast because dairy, like milk and stuff like that, can coat your vocal cords. So stuff that's like warm tea, stuff like that is really good. Drinking a lot of water. Warm up a little bit in the morning. I don't recommend you rehearsing your full set before you hop in the studio. It might tire you out. Warm up like a moderate amount so that you don't feel super just like cold jumping into the vocal booth. I personally like a little bit of reverb in my monitor mix. It just helps me feel very comfortable. I don't like too much reverb because sometimes it could mask how your voice is actually sounding, and I like to be very aware of how I'm sounding as well. So just a little bit of a mix. Take your time communicating with your engineer, or if you're recording your own vocals in your home studio, take your time making sure that you're checking back and feeling really comfortable with how you sound in your microphone, in your headphones, and do a couple test runs until you get comfortable. But yeah, I think reverb is awesome for this and very important, and just like helps vocalists feel a lot more comfortable in the vocal booth. For me personally, I really do like to revisit tracks in the recording process. I think it really depends on you and just the flow in the studio, how your engineer works or how you prefer to work. But for me personally, I like to revisit tracks that I've already recorded, and I'll tell you why. A lot of the time, we'll start off, for example, with the first verse, and sometimes the first verse is like a little bit more chill than the rest of the song. It's not like the peak of the song. It's usually the more quieter part, right? That first verse. However, it's very strong in its own way. It's the first time those vocals come in. A lot of the time, someone's listening to a song, and then if they don't like the vocals, they're probably going to change the channel or something, you know? Like, if they're not really feeling it or believing it, they want to be engulfed in this story. So you want to come in strong and confident. A lot of the times, the very first thing you record in the vocal booth is probably not going to be the strongest and most confident thing, right? It takes a little time to get into it and get comfortable. It's not towards like the end, like maybe like after a couple takes where I'm just like, yeah, let's do it, let's go. And that's an energy I want all the way through. So if I feel like I didn't have that energy at the beginning when I recorded that first verse, I definitely will revisit and come back and redo that first verse again. It really depends on you and what you think needs that, but it's an option, and definitely consider it if you want to have that consistent energy flowing through your entire song. I definitely like to sing my clean vocals first when I'm recording a song. When it's time for me to record like those heavy, edgy metal vocals and growls, I like to feel the most energized and like hyped up, and I'm just like a little bit warmed up too. So when I lay those clean vocals down first, I know that my voice is really ready to start singing some more. I feel very warmed up, I'm energized, I love what I'm hearing. My monitor mix sounds like lit, so I'm just like, yeah, let's do this, and that's totally the energy I need personally to do growls. So yeah, I definitely like to do my clean vocals first, get that out of the way, make sure they sound beautiful and smooth and legible and not too raspy or anything like that. Then I will record those heavy, awesome metal growls and just like raspy vocals and harmonies and stuff like that. I like to be super energized for that. So that's what works with me, and I highly recommend it if you are recording metal vocals in the studio. When I was gigging a lot with like different bands and stuff like that, I definitely learned a lot, especially about recording an album. And I've worked with different engineers, and it always felt like a very different experience too. So it's good to be adaptable. You never really know what you're walking into when you're ready to record some vocals in the studio, and it's important to feel comfortable and making sure that everything sounds good in your headphones, your monitor mix sounds good, so that you can record the best tracks that you can, because that's what you're paying for, right? That being said, I definitely recommend finding an engineer that you really click with, and if you've been there before and you really enjoyed the experience, keep going to the engineer. At least you can have like that consistency. Because like sometimes when you're in the vocal booth, it can be kind of hard to get into your element and feel super comfortable in there. And you're not going to have an audience and all this adrenaline and the whole band behind you. Is this going to be you and the mix in your headphones and then like the audio engineer talking to you back and forth? So it's important to have like good communication. I definitely recommend making sure you take the time to have levels that you feel comfortable with when they're doing sound check, when they're, just checking volumes, like, oh, is this too loud? Do you want the click? Take your time with it. Don't feel shy or uncomfortable. I know when I was like younger and I would like go in the studio, I'd feel like super shy and be like, yeah, it's great. You're so great. I love it. It sounds perfect. And then maybe it wasn't super comfortable for me. Maybe there was a slight delay. And honestly, I didn't really know what I was listening for either. I was very new to recording vocals in the studio. So that's how I learned that it's important to feel the timing is good. There's no weird delay. The reverb sounds good, but it's not like too much reverb. It's a good amount. You're not being blasted to the past by like the backing track in your headphones, or it's not super duper quiet. And I also recommend just getting an engineer that like hypes you up. If you're the engineer for your own music, maybe you can kind of figure out what your workflow is. And when you're going into a studio, you have that experience already. You have an idea of what you like, and you can kind of communicate that with your engineer. So having a good relationship, a good communication with your engineer, I think is super important. It makes the whole experience a lot more enjoyable, and you're paying for it. So you want to make sure that it's coming out the way you want. Well, there is quite a difference between recording vocals in the studio and, of course, performing live. Like I said before, when you're recording live, you have like the audience, the adrenaline, you're having fun, your whole band's there, and you also had that sound check, so you know that everything is sounding pretty good. Definitely recommend taking that sound check super seriously too, just like making sure your monitor mix is good, making sure that you're sounding good on stage and someone's back there in the audience being like,
sounds good, bro.
That's a different experience than when you're in the studio. The studio is a little bit more intimate. I think it's really important to have a song that's rehearsed. We feel very confident and comfortable and you're ready to lay down these tracks. It's going to be like the best you've ever done it. When I'm performing on stage, sometimes I'll have the microphone on the stand or I'll take it off and I'm engaging with the audience. I'm running back and forth on the stage. I'm dancing, whatever. There are certain things that you want to be aware of, especially with rock and metal. You want to really own the stage and just headbang and go crazy and just have a good time. But you want to be very aware of, one, your posture, making sure that you have proper singing posture. You don't want to strain your voice, but also be aware of what you're doing with your microphone. And I'm guilty of this. I learned to not do this, and that is to have your microphone way out here. I'm a super loud singer, but the good thing about an awesome venue with a good sound engineer and, sound check is that they're riding the fader. They're making sure that you sound the best that you can. So if you're over here, they got your levels pretty sweet right there, but then out of nowhere, you're just like, that, or like this or whatever. They're just like, I don't even know what to do with you, man. Like, I can't even it's kind of hard for them to mix it, and the audience can lose some of those awesome vocal moments or lyrics or not really understand what you're saying. So be very aware of where the microphone is. Make sure it's always steady. So if you are singing something like super quiet, then maybe bring it a little bit closer. And if it's super loud, like you're really out there belting this stuff, maybe bring it a little bit more out. Right? But nothing drastic. Don't have it all the way out here, down here, behind your head. Don't, none of this. Don't whirl it around your head. You're just going to piss people off by doing that. Don't drop the mic. You want to be very aware with the microphone, because at the end of the day, your voice is your instrument. Your microphone is how you're heard. You want to make sure you're treating that with respect and keeping that like the focal point while you run around and go crazy, making sure that you're sounding as best as you can throughout the whole entire show. When it comes to performing live, I definitely recommend checking out what kind of microphone you'll be using beforehand. So during the sound check, just jot down really quick the brand that's on the microphone, or just ask the sound engineer. But it's super important because you can just do a quick Google search and figure out what kind of microphone it is, what it can handle, what the polarity pattern is, stuff like that is just important to know. I also recommend doing this when you're at the studio too. If you could figure out what kind of microphone you're using, or while the engineer is setting up or whatever, just take a quick look at the microphone and figure out what it is, and just do a quick search just so you know what you're working with, and maybe you'll find some little details that will help improve the overall track at the end of the day. When you're recording vocals in the studio, you want to get right into that pop guard, right there. Because that will catch a lot of the sound, and a lot of the times the microphone in the studio is well equipped to handle your vocals. Like I said, do a quick Google search, make sure you know what you're working with, because maybe you have a very sensitive condenser mic and you sing differently than you would a very durable, industrious, dynamic mic. So just figure out what you're working with and communicate with your engineer. Ask them, should I step away when I sing super loud, stuff like that, and they know their equipment, so they should be able to help you just fine. Or you could just do a quick search yourself and figure out what you're working with and the best way to sing with that microphone. I think investing in a vocal booth is an awesome idea and just a huge milestone. They make a lot of awesome portable ones. So if you have a smaller studio space, if it's just your bedroom or something, you could pack it up and, keep it under your bed or in your closet and just take it out when you're recording. If you have the space, build yourself an awesome vocal booth or invest in one. I highly recommend it because you just can't go wrong with that sound quality. It's so fun to mix vocals when it's just a good, clean track and you don't have to worry about any random room noise. I definitely recommend investing in a vocal booth when you can. However, if you're not at that point yet to invest in a vocal booth, but don't get me wrong, I've definitely stuffed a mattress inside of a closet and sang into my winter sweaters. Sometimes you just gotta work with what you got. Just put a pillow in there behind the microphone. Sounds good to me. If you need to do that, go for it. It is what it is. Right behind me, as you can see, That's DIY absorption right there, and that's rock wool wrapped in canvas. And on top of it, we put these wood panels to kind of bring some life back into the room. I mean, you could find like a lot of awesome like tips and tricks on the Metal Mastermind YouTube channel just for like building your home studio and treating it properly. But whether you have like, you know, mattress in your closet, or you get some foam and you put it in your closet, or you build a DIY wall, like a room like this, or you invest in a really good vocal booth, treatment is always important. You're just making sure that it sounds good and there's no weird reflections in sounds. Just being aware of that and just doing what you can to making sure you have the cleanest track is awesome, because that's how you learn and grow, and you just keep transforming your studio into a space that you love and that you can create freely. So yes, I think it's super important to invest in it or work towards investing in it one day. When I recorded the vocals for Metal Mastermind, we used an awesome vocal booth and it was so much fun, and I just felt very comfortable in there. It was totally just like a soundproof. I felt like I was like in my own world. All I heard was me and the music, and I felt comfortable singing in there, and I knew that the engineer was getting like super clean, awesome, dope tracks. As long as you're aware of it and you're always just trying to improve the sound quality of your vocal tracks, then you'll just keep growing and learning. There's a lot of awesome information on the Metal Mastermind YouTube channel about creating like a dope home studio, so definitely check that out. I'm Elizabeth de Deus. I am a metal vocal coach and music producer, and this is Metal Mastermind.